In today's video, we'll be covering the new features and enhancements in our Point 11.5 release. On today's agenda, we're going to be covering several different updates, changes, and additions to our credit running process and credit screens. Those screens will include the borrower e-loan file screen, the borrower information, the credit score disclosure, the registration rate and lock, warehouse purchase and advice, closing documents, and borrower screen. We'll also be talking about changes made to the notice of action taken, HMDA reporting, the VA certificate of loan disbursement, lender loan information page 2, loan application section 4, the VA loan summary, the Freddie Mac addendum, as well as the Freddie Mac loan assignment. All right, so let's jump right into point and talk about our initial update. And that initial update is going to be changes made to our credit ordering services screen. So to get there, we'll head up to the menu bar and select the option for services, credit reports, and then request credit. Our initial update focused on enhancing the credit ordering services screen. When you access your credit report request screen, you'll notice that we have incorporated the unit designator and the unit number. These fields will now be included in all exports as well, marking a significant addition that was previously unavailable inside of the system. We have added the former address right under the present address, so when the user is running credit, that will flow over. We also updated the mapping exports. The top two are the Calyx Closing 2.4 export and the Calyx Closing 2.6 export. These are what the vendors are able to use. So we've updated those as well as the Fannie Mae 3.2 export. So basically the vendors should get it in every format now, but it's just been added to this screen. All right, so moving over to our next enhancement, we're going to head over to our credit score information disclosure screen. And another big piece of this release is the credit score models. We've added two new credit score models, which would be the FICO 10T and the Vantage 4.0. I've split them apart so that you can see the Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax all have the same scores. We're also adding in the mappings to allow these new credit scores to flow into Point. This is in preparation for all of the credit changes that are coming within the industry. It's really step one for allowing all of these new credit scores and models to flow into our system. There are a lot more credit scores that are in that area now. So with the new credit score models, what the companies can do is they can call their credit vendors and let them know that they want to add in the 10T or the Vantage Score 4, and then the credit vendor will put it in their credit reports. Now, it is possible that each of the credit vendors are doing it differently, so there isn't a set standard across the board yet. So to give you a good example of this, we'll say me as a company, I can call into my credit company and we'll call it Credit Technology, and I'll say, hey, I want to add these two credit score models. They may say, okay, I'm going to add them all to your credit login, and you're going to get all 9 credit scores now rather than just the 3 for the borrower. That is one route they can take. Another route is they may say, all right, well, you want to run your Vantage 4, then you'll have to log in with a different set of credentials, and they would give you those. So it will depend on how the credit vendor sets it up, how the user may have to use these screens. But all the companies will have to contact their credit vendor for the new credit score models. They won't just appear when you upgrade to Point 11.5. If you want to see any of the extra information like the factors or the ranges, you can double click and that will open up the field and allow you to see more of that data. So this screen is the start and main screen that will set which credit scores and models that will flow through the system. So to start with, the credit score model will always be defaulted to all. So if you have a new credit vendor that you set up as a company and you want to have that one set to all the time for your FICO 10T or the Vantage 4.0, I will recommend defaulting these in your borrower master template. That way this screen will always have these options to select. Now, when it is selected to all, it is not going to mess up anyone who does not add the credit vendors. So if I'm only using Classic and I'm only pulling those 3 Classic credit scores for a borrower and a co-borrower, keeping it as all is only going to show those 3 credit scores. So it will not mess up anything for any other users that are still only using the Classic credit scores, so they won't have to make any changes. You will also notice that the middle credit score, high or low, will be based on what is in the chart on the screen. So if I select my FICO 10T, it will pick the middle credit score, and that is the same thing for the Classic. Now, if I go back to all, it will pick the middle of all the credit scores, but let's say that I do not want to use this Experian credit score in the list and I want to use something different. If I manually want to select something different, there is an override. So I can go to the Disclose dropdown and delete that entry. Push Tab, and that will allow me to select whichever disclose box that I want to select. And that will then be the disclosed credit score that will print on my credit score disclosure information here. Also, like I was saying earlier in the old screen, you can see more of the data. On this new screen, if I want to see more of those factors and data, I can highlight the line and double click it. And this is where I will see those factors and other information. This is also where I can make any edits or changes to that as well. You do have the Add, Edit, and Delete buttons up here at the top. This will allow you to add any of these scores manually if you do not want to do that. It also allows you to enter in the factors as well. Now, if someone is already in the credit score model, like the FICO 10T, and they want to add, it is only going to show the FICO 10T scores in the dropdown, because you cannot add a classic score model if you're in the score model for FICO 10T. So the last item for this screen is the export. So right now, Point only exports 3 credit scores, one for each of the models we have. All right, and for the last enhancement to the credit score information disclosure, we'll find that down at the bottom of this screen, and that is going to be the credit scores button. So when I click that, that pulls up my credit scores pop-up box, and you can see that all of my credit scores will be listed here in the JSON fields. This will allow me to see all of the credit score models and be able to click on them, add, insert, edit, and delete any of those credit scores in this section. All right, so now we're finally switching screens to talk about the next update. And this was done on the borrower information screen. So the changes that we were just talking about on the credit disclosure, these are some of the changes that were made to the borrower information screen. The old version, or the current version before 11.5, you used to see a gray box that would show all of your 3 classic scores, but now in 11.5, we now have the JSON table that will show all of the credit score models like we did on the credit disclosure screen. We did keep the minimum FICO score there for companies that like to type in the score and use it to reference. So that will work in the same way and still works with the loan program templates. You do also have the show all button on the far right of all of the credit scores. This will show all of those credit scores listed in this table. All right, and moving over to our next enhancement, which is going to be our eLoan file and borrower screen. So what we've done in 11.5 is we've split it out to try to make it look more like the rest of the file on the borrower information screen. And also at the bottom, we do have the credit update. So this is very much like we used to have on the credit disclosure area where it was split out more. Now it is the table information on the new screen. This is pretty much the same table that you have on your credit score disclosure, except again, it doesn't have the checkbox on the left where you are allowed to pick the credit score. That is all done on the credit disclosure screen. The next screen that had a change is the banker closing borrower screen. In 11.5, you can see that we have stacked the credit scores to give it a little bit more room and added the JSON table in as well. Our next screen update is going to be to our banker, underwriting, track registration, and rate and lock. These screens are the same layout. Now in 11.5, very similar to the last screen we had, we stacked that to give room for that table. And then we have the qualifying score right below that. Another screen that we have made some similar changes to would be the banker, warehouse, and purchase advice screen. In 11.5, we have stacked them into the JSON field table. All right, so that's going to end the updates for all of the credit score models and credit score screen changes. Now we're going to move on to our next update, which is to the notice of action taken. This screen hasn't changed. What changed is the action taken when you click the copy from credit score disclosure button. So when you click that, now in 11.5, we put the credit scores in the table, and you do have the select checkbox on the left. So you can click the checkbox on the left for borrower and co-borrower, so the information will flow to the notice of action taken. All right, so moving on to our next update, which was made to our HMDA reporting. For the HMDA screen in the score model dropdown, We've just added the two new score models into the dropdown for both the borrower and the co-borrower. So now you have the ability to track and add that to your report as well. All right, and moving over to our next update, which is for the VA Certificate of Loan Disbursement. So for the VA Certificate of Loan Disbursement, this is a screen update. I've highlighted the items on the screen that are updates and additions. The purpose of the screen update was that the form did not match the screen. The data was found on several different screens in the system, and with the various updates to the print form, we just went ahead and rearranged this one screen to add in all of the information to match the print form. So it should be much easier for you to use this one screen versus navigating to multiple point screens to find out where that data flows from. So up here at the top, we've added the VA loan number here, so that will flow over smoothly now. We've also organized the screen by section in the same way they appear in the print form. So if you do look at the print form, you will see those different sections, and this should make it a lot easier to follow along. So you'll see right here, section 1, purpose, amount, terms, and security for loan. That's been added with a new box. Below that, we have renamed the drop down for the purpose of loan, which matches exactly to the print form. So this makes it easier for you to find and identify. Below that, we have these fields here. A lot of these have not changed. They were already on the screen. We've just rearranged some of the sections to again match the order of the print form. And then next, it flows over to the next section at the bottom, which is the escrow section. So we did add the escrow section as well as added the escrow amount field. We did have an escrow amount field. It was just labeled differently and was a little confusing for some of our users. So we did want to match that verbiage as well as the if the land acquired by separate transactions. So adding this header here just made it easier to know what data should be entered in these fields. Right below that, we've renamed section 2 Lender's Certification to make it more clear what data and what section you're entering. The field below that has not been changed at all, but we did add a section for the lender's name and address. Before this change, you were having to go into different screens inside a point to find this and then add it so it would display on the print form. So we've added that here along with a Cardex link, which is a symbol with the circle on top. So you can use your Cardex database here to pull in data faster. Now moving down to the very bottom is section 3. You'll see a lot of highlights here because a lot of this is new. So there are 3 sections in section 3: occupancy, reasonable value, and the certificate of eligibility conditions. These are a completely new set of checkboxes for you, but again, it's just to match up to the actual print form. Also, the checkboxes up at the top have been renumbered to match the print form as well. So all of this flows over to the VA Certificate of Loan Disbursement print form. So this should make it a lot easier for you to fill out and match the sections on the print form with sections on the new VA Certificate of Loan Disbursement screen. Now, moving on to Lender Loan page 2, we have 2 updates on this screen. The first one is in this section. We have grayed out the delete button when earnest money is entered or listed in this section. So users wanted to be able to edit or delete earnest money from this screen, and we couldn't do that at all. So the way that we were able to allow it to be edited or deleted is if it is coming from the main borrower and a main co-borrower, meaning they are on one application and there's no co-borrower 1 through 5. It's just the main borrower and main co-borrower. If it's on that application, only then the delete button will be available. When you start adding in co-borrower 1 through 5s and they've submitted earnest money, then this field turns into a sum of all of those earnest monies from all of those borrowers' applications. So that is when we have now disabled the delete button, and you would need to go into each of those separate borrowers' applications and edit or remove the earnest money from there. But you now have the option which you did not have, which is being able to edit or delete earnest money if it's only for the main borrower and co-borrower. The second addition is something that we got from the lenders that like to print out a final loan application and have that match the closing disclosure. So inside the lender credit button, and this is only if you have the freeze fees on the fees worksheet checked, so it would bring it to the closing disclosure fees. You can see in this section, we have added the include tolerance cure checkbox. So if you are a lender and you are printing the final application with all their numbers and you want to match what you have on your closing disclosure for your audit or for your closing package, for whatever you want to match. Now you're going to be able to have that match. So if on the closing disclosure, page 3, they have the increased exceeds the legal limits by checkbox checked, and you have put in an amount there, that will then automatically flow back over to this include tolerance cure amount. So that should help you keep those two documents the same going forward. All right, so another update that we have, and this is for the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac updates. This is to the loan application section 4D, and this is for your gifts and grants. So once you click add, you're going to get this screen. And we added a section from lender over on the right. This section will automatically be grayed out. What this is an opportunity for you to add in the closing cost and down payment. If the source drop down here is lender or non-originating lender, if those two options are selected from the source, then the two boxes on the right will ungray, and then you can enter your value there. Fannie and Freddie seem to want this breakdown if the source is coming from a lender or a non-originating lender. If it's not for a lender or a non-originating lender, those boxes will be grayed out. We also put in an error. If you have a lender or non-originating lender selected in the source and those boxes opened up on the right, and you type in a value for closing costs or down payment, the amount has to equal that cash value field over on the left. So for example, if you have $10 in closing costs and $10 in down payment, then the system needs to see $20 in that cash value field over on the left. Otherwise, you will get an error message advising that the amount should even out. We've also updated the source drop down with who is in that list. But again, these changes are for what Freddie and Fannie are wanting to see now. Our next update is on the VA loan summary. The entitlement code and entitlement amount, we have unsynced this between borrower sets. So you've got your VA borrower on your main application. When you go to your co-borrower 1, if you go to any VA screen, they will not have the entitlement code, and it won't print on any of those disclosures. And that was the reasoning behind this particular update. Okay, so over on our Services Freddie Mac addendum screen is where we're going to find our next update. We have 2 new fields added in. Fannie Mae had these fields added in a while ago, these fields being the property data ID and project. These are just data fields right now, so you can put something in these fields and it will flow over when you run Freddie and Fannie. These fields have both been added to the Freddie Mac and the Fannie Mae addendum screens. All right, and for our last update, a while ago we had the Freddie Mac loan assignment come into point. We've done an update here for the dropdown. The request type, we have hid one of the options if a couple qualifying things do happen. So if there's a case file ID number inside of the loan file, or there's a borrower's first name or a co-borrower's first name, then this dropdown is going to hide the loans assigned by company option. This is just to help reduce some errors that you could be getting. So that will be hidden if you have those scenarios inside of your point file. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact our dedicated customer service at calixdcs@calixsoftware.com.